Dhomonique Ricks. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, Andrew, thanks for having me on. This is such a pleasure.
I've been looking forward to this because you are like one of the most nice, happy people around.
Oh, you're so sweet.
And it's genuine too. It's not, like you can be around like people that, you can fake it a little bit, but I don't feel like you are. If so, you're doing really good at it.
Oh, well, thank you. My philosophy has always been, people always made fun of me in college and high school. They were like, oh, you're always sunshine and rainbows, and you believe in fairy tales, and you believe in all this stuff. And I'm like, you know what?
What's wrong with that?
If sunshine and rainbows are bad, then I don't care.
No, I think more people should go along that route. So, our podcast is obviously about happiness.
Yeah.
Like, what makes you happy?
Whew, how much time do you have?
Oh, we've got plenty of time.
That's a great question, and lots of things. But, I think what it boils down to for me is happiness is a mental state.
Okay.
It's a state of mind. And so people always say, well, you're always smiling. You're always so happy. You can't always be happy. And my answer to that is, you're right. I'm human.
Sure.
I have days where I have a bad day or, something happens. Of course, I'm a human. So there are days that are not the best, so to speak. But I try to make it a philosophy of life to live every day to the fullest. Life is short.
Absolutely.
We're not promised tomorrow.
No.
It takes more energy, in my opinion, to be negative and to fester on negativity, which I don't like. It doesn't make me feel good.
No.
So I had a principal in middle school, and every morning he would do the morning announcements.
Where'd you grow up at?
Minnesota.
Minnesota, okay.
Minnesota. And so he would always say, when he ended the announcements, he would say, make it a great day or not. The choice is yours.
It's interesting that you remember that.
It resonates. I mean, that's like one of the few things from middle school. A lot of it's just like history 101. No, but it really resonated with me and stuck with me because it is a choice. Happiness is a choice. You can choose to be happy. You can choose to be unhappy. And that's where it comes to being a state of mind.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you did something to me, I can say, oh, well, it's Andrew's fault. Well, that's living below the line.
Okay.
I say 95% of people live below the line in blame, shame, and justification. 5% of people live above the line in responsibility and accountability. Huh. And so for me, it was always training myself that even on those days that are not the best, to make a point to be happy, not for anyone else, but for myself, because I feel better when I'm happy. And I truly believe we keep our own power when we choose how we want to feel. Me saying, oh, Andrew did this to me, and so I'm mad, is me playing a victim subconsciously.
So then what do you think?
What do you think about what?
Like, okay, if I hurt you or something, then what goes through your mind? Because, that's pretty typical. Like you said, 95%. And probably people are above or below the line depending on where they're at in life or, so many different factors.
Sure. And there's a lot of things and a lot of caveats that go into it. Because some people will say, well, someone said something mean about me behind my back, right? Something common like that. Well, it might sting for a few minutes, but I always try to take a step back and say, okay, this person said something about me. How does that really change my life?
Yeah.
That's more so a reflection of that person, more so than it is a reflection of me. And so that's where the empathy and the sympathy can come in, where it's like, okay, Andrew said something, whether he meant it or not, that's his opinion.
Sure.
Les Brown, do you follow Les Brown? He's a motivational speaker.
Mm-hmm.
So he says, and it's one of my favorite quotes too. I'm a quote person. So if you follow me on Facebook, you'll know I'm like
Monday motivation.
Morning motivation.
Morning
every
motivation.
day,
Okay,
every day. And Les Brown has a quote, and it says, someone's opinion of you does not have to become someone's opinion of you does not have to become your reality. Someone's opinion of you does not have to become your reality. So that basically means if someone says X about you and they think you're bad or selfish or whatever, that's their opinion.
Sure.
And they're entitled to it.
Absolutely.
Good on them.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that has to become your reality. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there who, may not like my style or may not like me as a news anchor or may not whatever. Mm-hmm. But for all those that don't, there are plenty that do. And I get messages every day from people saying, you know what? I love your attitude. I love how you take situations and make them positive. And so it's a state of mind being positive.
I mean, we've had John Holt on the podcast,
Love John.
Joel Nichols, and, you know, I've asked a question about that. You know, what kind of stuff do people send you? Because, you know, you are a visible person and people have lots of opinions on things. Most of it, like you said, doesn't really matter per se. But they always said the females are the ones that are getting the comments like, I didn't like what you wore today.
Sure.
I mean, is that pretty true? I mean, you're the first female media personality we've had on the podcast.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, I feel like, and I can't compare myself to the men because I'm not a man and I've never stepped in, you know, John's shoes, for example. But what I will say for myself personally, yeah, you know, not that it matters. I mean, you get a tough skin in this business, and if you don't have a tough skin, you'll never make it. I tell everybody that. So, you know, one time I had on a dress that kind of had like a animal print to it.
Yeah.
And someone called the station. They said, oh my gosh, she looks like an alligator and blah, 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 blah.
Was Kathy Quinn just jealous, maybe?
It wasn't Kathy. Love Kathy's style, by the way. But it's one of those things where you learn to laugh it off.
Sure.
And sometimes when you go back and look at clips, you can go back and say, yeah, you know, it does look like a little bit of like an alligator suit. You know, it had like a legit alligator print to it. I still like it. I'll still wear it. Doesn't really, you know, have a huge impact, but you do hear things like that. Now, I've been very, very blessed and lucky that I don't get many of those.
Interesting.
But also for every quote unquote negative, there's also the positive people that if you read through what they're saying, there's some really good feedback there. So for example, I've had people write and say, hey, I'm watching you right now while I'm on, you know, on the air. They'll message me on Facebook or Twitter.
Sure.
They'll say, hey, you have lipstick on one of your teeth. Or, hey, you're missing an earring. And things like that are like, you know, some people might take it offensively. I'm like, oh my gosh, I sure am. You know, mom life, you're running around, you're missing an earring.
Yes.
And so I actually appreciate those.
Yeah.
Before I moved here, I lived in Cleveland and I was a news anchor for the ABC affiliate in Cleveland. And this one woman wrote me this long email one day and she's like, you stand like a man. You need to put your legs together when you're standing. And so the station I was at, all the shots were full body shots, and I never really realized I did that. I was just kind of my stance. And so,
I mean, but is that a thing? Like, is that a big deal?
You know, to this person it was.
Okay.
And I remember when I read that, I'm like, who would say something like that? That is so rude.
Yeah.
And I went to my husband and I said, what do you think about this? And it's always good to have a person to kind of bounce things off of. And he was like, oh, well, you know, I don't think you do, but maybe, you know, maybe there's something
totally
to
like
that.
see him saying that too. That's just great.
Oh yeah. So my husband, he's British and he's like sunshine and rainbows too. So
super laid back.
Yeah, super
Love
cool,
him.
a super chill guy. So anyways, I corrected it on air. And so I started standing with my legs closer together. And you know what? Visually, when I went back and watched before and after, it did look a lot better. And
Did
so
you reply to that person?
I did. I sent her well, actually, she had followed up with me and said, hey, I noticed you're standing differently. Love it. Huge fan. You know, just wanted to help you out.
Interesting.
And I sent her a message back and I said, you know what? I really appreciate that. Okay. I said, because a lot of times people would get something like that and they would be very offended by that and say, oh, who do you think you are? You know, sending me a message like that. Yeah. But sometimes when you can get your ego out of the way, you can take some really positive feedback in and better yourself because of it.
That's so true. And, you know, we get lots of feedback too, just with our business. And, you know, we have a 93% satisfaction rate. But that 7% sometimes just really like keeps me up at night.
Yeah.
And obviously, you know, you always want to do better, but yeah, it's so true. You know, there's some hidden gems in there from what people are trying to say, even if they don't say it in the nicest way.
And I always say, not everyone will love you. I don't care what your business is. I don't care who you are. I mean, any president in the history of America has had people who have loved him and who have not.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's always going to be about 50-50 right now.
Yeah. And there's always, I don't care what you do. And if that's one thing I can relay to anyone listening to this, don't base yourself, your product, or your business off of what everyone else thinks, because sometimes it's just that one person. It's like a splinter in your mind, right? And you're like, that one person, that one person, that one person. They have no effect on you. Yet on the flip side, there might be 1,000 other people who are like, I love donutology.
Yep.
But there's that one guy who doesn't like donutology for whatever reason. Maybe he wants to have a company like that, or maybe he's doesn't like donuts, or whatever the situation is. So I always say, focus on you internally, find inner peace and inner satisfaction, because that's where it starts.
Sure.
If you're happy internally, all of that, I call it white noise. It really doesn't matter.
I mean, so do you compartmentalize? I mean, for instance, we had an issue that just really took over my mind a couple days ago, and I wasn't as nice as I should be at home, and it was causing a rift, at home. I mean, so how is it for you to be able to talk about a murder on television and then go home and play with your kid?
It's an everyday practice, I'm not going to lie. I mean, we work in a really tough industry, really tough. I mean, we talk about children being killed all the time, children living in squalor, adults being killed, theft. I mean, anything you can think of, burglary, awful things I can't even say on this podcast. I don't want to bring this podcast down, but we cover a lot of negative news. And you have to learn, mentally train yourself to separate yourself from work and what this is. My job is to hold people accountable. My job is to tell the stories that are out there in an unbiased and informative way. My job is not to get involved personally with a lot of these stories, even though some it's hard not to, because you have a connection. I'm a mom, right? So on a lot of stories that involve children, especially children being harmed in any sort of way, they're very difficult for me to read and to cover. I'm a human.
And us for to consume.
Right, and exactly. And so when you go home, I think for me personally, it's taught me to appreciate every day, the little things. I look at my son, and I have one coming in 30 days, coming soon.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And, I think you appreciate time more. Like when we have time to play in the morning before I come into work, I cherish those moments because, as you know, they grow up so fast. And so
Days are long, years are short.
Yep. That's one of my favorite quotes, actually. And they are, I look at my son now, he's almost a year and a half, and I feel like I was just pregnant with him. And so I try every day to look at my son and my kids and embrace every second of every day because, like I said earlier, tomorrow's not promised. I see so many kids who don't have love in their lives, and I want my children to know how special they are, how loved they are, how talented they are, and how amazing they can be in this world if they just put their minds to whatever it is that their hearts are connected to.
It's a great worldview. I mean, let's talk about what is your life story? I mean, so you're from Minnesota.
Yeah.
What was that like growing up?
Cold.
I know, I had family up there.
My brain is frozen thinking about it. Minnesota was a really good area. I'm from a small family, mom, dad, I have a brother. That's it. My dad is one of three, and of those three, only one had a child. So I only have one first cousin, which is really weird. People go, you only have one cousin and one brother? Yep.
I only have a few myself. But what made you want to get into news then?
You want to hear my story?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, so my father is a former administrator, high school administrator.
Oh, wow.
And so at the age of 13, he came home right before summertime.
Did you attend that high school?
I did not.
Okay, that would have been interesting.
No, but I did. Funny story, though. But I did attend. My mom was a teacher.
Okay.
And so my senior year of high school, I actually attended the school she taught at.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
So that was it was cool, but then a little strange because I'd be like walking to class and she'd be like, honey, you forgot your muffin. I'm like, Mom, stop.
my wife's a teacher, and her dream is to have our kids go to her school. I don't know I don't think she can teach them. I'm sure there's some rules on that.
Sure.
But I don't know. That's
motherhood's the best thing. And now in hindsight, if I had that opportunity, I'd be like, bye, sweetie, don't forget your muffin. You know what I mean? So even though it was embarrassing at the time, it was all in love. But so senior year, I went to my mom's school that she taught at. And by the way, teachers, that is the best profession.
Oh my gosh.
Any teacher out there, shout out to you. Love, love, love teachers. So I was 13, and my dad would get flyers for different workshops and camps and things like that. And they would distribute those to the students and say, hey, there's an engineering camp, or there's a math club camp, or whatever.
They have a news camp?
Yeah.
I
So
didn't
there
know
was
that.
a brand new camp that had just started called the Urban Journalism Workshop.
Okay.
And it was at St. Thomas University in St. Paul, Minnesota. So my dad brought this flyer home. I'll never forget it. It was printed like you and I would print off of a normal computer. Nothing fancy,
Sure.
nothing shiny. It was just like on this pale yellow trifold piece of paper. And he said, "Hey, Dhomonique, the director of this came by."
How do you remember that?
I'll never forget it.
That's such a weird detail to remember.
I'll never forget it.
I can't even tell you what I had for breakfast.
It was like pale yellow. Certain things in life that really stick in your mind, you never forget them. And so, trifold, like a pale yellow color. And he goes, "Dhomonique, I met the director of the Urban Journalism Workshop." And I was like, "Okay." And he's like, "I really think you'd be good at this." I said, "I don't really know what is that?
What do
And how does that work?"
What do you do at that camp?
And so he's like,
Is it like do you stay in like a dormitory?
You
and
do.
everything like
So
that?
you go away for 2 weeks.
Oh, 2
and
weeks,
you
wow.
learn everything about journalism, radio, print, and television.
And so then you had to, I assume, do stories at the camp?
So he brought the flyer home and said, "I think you should apply for it." And I said, "Nah, I want to be like a wedding planner for celebrities in Milan or like a supermodel, like the normal stuff,
yeah,
right?"
Absolutely. Same.
So runway for you?
Absolutely.
Catwalk?
I could try.
Okay, there you go.
I'm a little gangly.
I could
don't
see
know.
it.
I'd definitely fall. I'm just saying.
Oh, I doubt that. So he goes, "I think you should apply for it." So I said, okay. So I wasn't interested. I'm not going to lie. Zero interest. I filled it out maybe 10, 15 minutes. And it had certain questions. Like they wanted you to write small essays. What is your, definition of success?
Sure.
Politically, what do you think we could do better? Things like that, right? So I filled it out, literally 10 minutes, mailed it in. 2 weeks later, I got an envelope. And I opened it from the Urban Journalism Workshop. "Dear Dhomonique, we are," what did it say? "We're sorry to inform you that," so basically I didn't get into the camp. And it was the first time that I remember being rejected.
Yeah, a little adversity there.
And I was like, "What? I didn't get in. What do you mean I didn't? Why?" And so I kind of woke up at that moment and thought, okay, well, maybe it's because I didn't do well on my application. I just filled it out in a few seconds and didn't care and didn't put any thought or effort or time into it. So I just kind of brushed it off. A year later, I was 14. My dad comes home with the same tri-colored trifold.
Round 2.
Yep. And he said, "Hey, Dhomonique," he's like, "I know we haven't talked about this in a year." He's like, "But you have a gift." He's like, "You're really, really, really good and comfortable speaking, and you're really good at writing. I think this is something that you might want to look into." And I said, "Well, Dad, I didn't get in last year." He's like, "And?" I said, "Well, what's to say I'm going to get in this year?" He's like, "What's to say that you're not going to get in this year?" So I said, "Okay, well, let me look into this."
This is kind of like Michael Jordan getting cut from the team. But it's amazing
I'm
how
no Michael Jordan, but thank you.
That's awesome.
So then he said, "What's to say that you can't do it?" So I went to my room and I said, "Okay, I'm going to put effort in this time. But if I don't get in, let's just leave it. It's not meant to be." So I went upstairs and I spent a lot of time on my answers. I really thought things through, thought them out. I had a typewriter, not to age myself, typed everything out, got it printed or, pulled out of the typewriter, mailed it in. 2 weeks later, congratulations, you've been accepted into the Urban Journalism Workshop.
That could have gone so many different ways. Like you could have just said, screw this camp. I'm not going to be part of it.
Sure. And I kind of felt that way in the beginning because, again, there's that little sting that we talked
right,
about.
But this is what you talked about earlier about putting your ego aside.
Yeah. That's the key. I think so often people fail in life or at certain things because they get one tiny no and then it just defeats them completely. They think, "Oh, well, they said no, I can never do it again. I can never do it again."
Yep.
Our minds, if we can control our minds, we can accomplish so much in life.
Yep.
But so often there's like this seed of doubt and we're constantly saying, "Oh, well, I can't do it. I won't make it. I'm not good enough. Why would I get in?" And that, I don't know why. It's a human trait, but it plays over and over.
There's got to be like a survival
splinter in the
there.
mind. Yeah. And so long story short, I went to the camp. It was 2 weeks and I fell in love with it. Day one, I called my dad. I said, "Dad, I love this. This is what I want to do with my life." And he said, really? I said, yeah. I said, this is what I want to do.
That's a big statement.
And I knew it from then on. And so I left the camp. It was 3 parts: radio, print, television. I love the TV part. Love the print part too, but I really just felt kind of more of a knack in the television area. So I left, and I was laser focused after that. There's a show in Minneapolis. It's not on the air anymore, unfortunately, called Whatever. Very similar to like Entertainment Tonight for teenagers.
Okay.
And so we covered all sorts of entertainment. So whenever celebrities were in town, whenever we do movie reviews, but we'd also hit on teen issues and topics like anorexia, bullying, things like that.
So you were on that show?
I hosted the show for 4 years. And so I went and auditioned. And the year I auditioned, they had 8 different spots that were open. So they had 8 people, and we would kind of host and report and do it all through KARE 11, which is the NBC affiliate based in Minnesota. So they would produce the whole thing, and we were the talent that would come in and kind of facilitate those roles. And so when I went to apply, I knew I wanted to do it. It was at the Mall of America. And if you're not familiar with the Mall of America, it's a huge mall. I think it's number 1, the largest in America, if I'm not.
At one point it was.
At one point it was. Yeah, back in the day it was. And so I told my mom, audition started at 8 a.m. So I said, we got to get there at 5. She goes, honey, 5? I go, 5. We have to be first in line.
5 a.m.
5 a.m. So she's like, okay. So we get up. I got ready. We get to the mall, park, go in. Now, the mall's ginormous, right? So the line at 5 a.m., well, it was 6 by the time we got there, wrapped around almost one section of the entire mall. Tons of kids. And I was thinking there'd be like maybe 100 there.
Yeah, there was more than that.
Thousands. So we get there, my heart sank. And as I'm walking past all these kids in line, I'm thinking to myself, can I do this? Am I good enough? What makes me better than her or him? Okay, so I'm walking in line, and I'm trying to psych myself up. And I remember I'm 14 at the time.
Through? I mean,
a couple hours.
Wow.
Now, the first audition was quick. Once you got to the front of the line, they gave you a sheet of paper, and there were 5 questions on it. Super easy, like, what's your favorite sport? Or who's your biggest role model? Just really kind of easy questions like that. You pick one. There's a panel of judges. You give them the sheet of paper. They say, what number? Number 2. They ask you the question, and they go, okay, thank you.
Interesting.
That was it. I don't even remember my question, but I remember answering it.
So how many people they call back?
200.
200. So then you had another round of interviews.
Yep, and then they cut it down to 30, and then all 30 of us went to KARE 11 to the studios, and they did like all sorts of on-camera tests and radio voiceovers and just all kinds of stuff. Very nerve-wracking. And then I found out a few weeks later that I was picked to host the show.
I mean, that's really cool that so many people were interested. I mean, was it like a paid thing? Like, was it?
It was. I mean,
what's the motivation?
So it wasn't like paid well. I mean, we got a little stipend for each episode we did, but I mean, nothing to pad our pockets by any, those bubble gum money. Yeah. You know what I mean? So there was a little bit of money just for our time, so to speak, but it wasn't anything that you'd put in a college fund. The motivation, I think, at that age,
fame?
For a lot of them, yeah. It was kind of like, like a pop star. Like, you get to be on a pretty big platform. And whenever people would come into town, big names, you would get to interview them. So whether it was,
so that's cool.
Christina Milian or Brad Pitt or whomever, we would get to go in and do interviews as well. And so that's how I started in the industry. And then started going to different camps and workshops and joining tons of different organizations. And I got bit by the bug really early on, and I didn't stop.
And so that's how you went on to Mizzou?
Yeah, I went to Mizzou. M-I-Z.
Z-O-U?
Yay. What school did you go to?
I went to Creighton in Omaha.
Okay, so you can say Z.
My father-in-law went to KU, and my mother-in-law went to Mizzou. So interesting household.
I'm
especially
sure it
when they
is.
used to play each other.
I know, right?
Yeah, but so then where was your first gig after college?
First gig after college was in Virginia, Central Virginia, in a town called Lynchburg.
That's where you met your husband, right?
That's where Frank and I met. Yep, his name's Frank. We met there. And Lynchburg was, it was...
What'd you do there? Did you do...
I was an anchor and a reporter there. So I did both positions. And I enjoyed it. I really did. Your first market, you learn a lot.
Sure.
And you mess up a lot. And it's great being in a smaller market because you can make those mistakes.
Yeah, they're not amplified.
And they're not amplified. You got it. So, and you learn everything. So in smaller markets, you anchor, you report. But I'd also write stories for the web. I'd also, I had a little blog that I did called Dhomonique's Discoveries, and I'd find little things around town.
You need to bring that back.
I should. That were like cool and neat or eclectic or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'd do like little reports on these things. I was there for 6 years, a tiny bit over 6 years. Really enjoyed it. Went to Cleveland. Went there as an anchor. I anchored the 4 o'clock news in Cleveland for a little bit. Really enjoyed that. Cleveland's a really good city, but I didn't see myself there long term.
Okay.
And my husband and I knew we wanted to start a family.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, well, let's find a city that we can really see ourselves in and can put some roots down in, because I personally am not a big puddle jumper, meaning you go here for 2-3 years and then you're moving 2-3 years. It's fine in the beginning, but after a while.
I was going to ask you, we're here in the studio, but what's next?
Honestly, I'm really happy here. And that's not a BS answer. I truly, Kansas City is a great city, and it reminds me of back home. Now, Minneapolis, I'm from a suburb of Minneapolis. It's a little cold for me. Beautiful, beautiful area. Beautiful area. Great people. I love my Midwest people, but it's a little chilly.
It is a little
and
chilly.
So KC gives me everything that I love and more. It has a big city feel with small town charm. Yep. I don't feel like I'm lost here, like a New York City where you feel like, you walk down a block and you see 2 different Starbucks in the course of a block. You know what I mean? It's
crazy?
Just on each corner. So Kansas City's great. I love it here.
Do you think Midwest people are happier? I don't want to generalize too much, but I don't know, because New York City kind of triggered them, like something for me. Or
well, they say New York City is the loneliest place on earth. Have you heard that before?
I have.
Because it's so large, and I've had a few friends who've lived there, and they tell me they're like literally just walking from one end of a block to another. There's so many different things and places and businesses. There's so many different. I'm not knocking Starbucks by any means. Any coffee shop. There's coffee shops every couple of feet that you really can't find your grounding there. Whereas like a Kansas City, you can find a pocket that you love, whether it's the Freight House District or whether it's the Plaza or whether it's Leawood or Crossroads.
Yeah.
There's so many different areas that you feel like you can really embrace the city. Whereas in a New York, and I've never lived there, I've been there many times, but to me, I just feel like I'd be a little lost not having, small things. Like I like to drive from point A to point B.
How do you do, because obviously you have to know your audience, and so you have to do a lot of research on the city. And, how do you cater your style to all those different pockets and types of people?
That's actually a great question, and I don't think you do. I don't think you cater yourself at all.
So that's like a stay true to who you are sort of answer.
And it's funny because my agent, when I first got signed, she said, well, who's a Dhomonique? And I had these scripted answers. Oh, Dhomonique, da, 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 da. And she's like, okay, cute. But who are you? What makes you happy? What makes you tick? Who are you?
Yeah.
And it took me a minute to sit back and think, who am I? I don't know. What makes me laugh? What makes me like... When you tune into Dhomonique, what do you get?
Yep.
And I didn't have an answer for that. So it took me a little while to figure who I was out. And I call that finding your authentic self.
Okay.
And that is what your brand is. And so anyone who follows me or knows me, my brand, it's funny we're doing this podcast. It's sunshine and rainbows. Like I said off the top, I love to smile. I love to laugh. I love to help people. I love family. I love kids. I love being a mom. I love the simple things in life. So for me, like having a hot shower and like a cup of coffee, like brilliant. Like I love simple things in life. And so for me, I'm not impressed by the big old hoopla. I would rather have a morning with my family, making scrambled eggs at home and laughing hysterically. Like that's who I am. And so so when you find a market, it's not about changing yourself to fit their brand. It's about them seeing you and saying, she fits our brand. And Fox 4 is very family oriented. If you look at the talent here, you'll see that all of us are really, really family oriented. What you see is what you get. And not all stations
true.
are like that. When people ask me when we're out in public, hey, what is John like? Or what is Pat like? Or whomever.
Yeah.
I'm like, literally what you see on camera is literally what they are like.
But what's that like, coming into a new job and you've got to work really closely with these people, and how do you, like, I don't want to say how do you present yourself as, like, how do you fit in and all that? Because I know a lot of people do have anxiety about changing jobs, and
of course.
And what's that like though? What's the process like of getting to know your coworkers?
Okay, well, kind of a two-part thing. So when you move anywhere, there's always, you always have nerves. The nerves of, will the market like me?
Sure.
Will the other talent here like me? You have to put that aside and say, okay, I'm coming to this city, and I always tell people, when you move somewhere, they're interviewing you just as much as you're interviewing them.
Yep.
So you have to find the right fit for yourself too, because you might, go to a place and say, there's just something intuitively that's just not connecting. There's something not quite right there. Not to say it's a bad job, but it just might not be the right fit. And so anytime a job opens up, whether it's here, especially for an anchor position, or anywhere in the country, they're not interviewing just one person. They're going through tons and tons and tons of videos and links and clips, and then they'll narrow it down to their top 10 or 5. Then they bring those 5 in. And then those 5, one at a time, will meet with like the other talent.
I was going to say, is the other talent in on the interviews?
They are.
Yeah, okay.
And so they can kind of say, I don't think she fits in here, or, oh, she's great, we love her, she'll be a good fit. And then you also get to see who you could potentially be working with and say, because
that goes both ways.
I don't feel like I'm going to fit in here. Or, this market, I just don't know if my style will work here. And so I think you kind of get a pretty good read before you sign on any line, so to speak. Now, in terms, you said, of getting your coworkers to like you, how do you...
Yeah, I don't mean that like in a, like, you need to like bend to their will, but I was just curious, the social dynamics of, creating that bond so that you have a stronger bond on air.
Right. I've just been really blessed. Every station I've worked at, I've had a really good rapport.
Like,
with
are you guys
people.
all friends?
We are, yeah. But also, I think it's a step above being friends. We all have our own lives outside of TV, so no one gets into the mindset of, oh, well, I thought we were hanging out this weekend. Oh, you're with your kids? Oh.
But
there's none of that,
do
right?
the viewers like expect you and John or Pat to just be strolling down the street having a good time?
I don't think that's the expectation, but we all hang out. So, sometimes like John and I will do like Sunday Fun Day.
Yeah, I know, he's got a nice wine drinking group on Sundays.
Yeah, it's great. And John is salt of the earth. John is like, and he didn't pay me to say this. Like, John is such a wonderful person.
Yep.
He is a great friend. He and my husband are actually really good friends too. But he's just really easy to be around.
He is.
And he understands, because John has a life outside of Fox 4 too.
Yep.
So when I first came here,
He'll tell you it's mostly bad golf.
Well, I'm not going to comment on that. His words, not mine. So, we'll do Sunday Fun Day. Now, I haven't been to a Sunday Fun Day in a little while.
Yeah.
I got a 1-year-old right now, and I'm pregnant,
you're a little busy,
and things are a little more chaotic these days, but it doesn't affect the relationship. No one has an ego of like, oh, well, you used to come and now you don't. There's none of that, which I appreciate. Anyone here, and there's no ego in terms of anchors versus reporters or any of that stuff. People get together all the time. So, yeah, it's great.
See, I wanted to ask you about balancing work and being a mom, but I also feel like that question, like, men don't get asked that.
That's okay. You can ask me that if you want to.
I know, but do you see that double standard a lot? Where you have to balance, being a parent more than maybe Frank, or I don't know. Yeah, I think it's there. I think it's fair to say that.
Sure,
still occurs. In society,
sure. And it's, there's no cookie cutter method to it. Shout out to some dads. Some dads act as the mom, or the primary, caretaker or whatever. So everyone's situation is different. Yeah, it's tough to be a working mom, and so I'm very fortunate to have a super supportive husband, and that is the reason I can do a lot of what I do, is because He loves being a dad. So there's not that situation if I'm going to an event on a Saturday that he's like, well, what do I do with the kids?
What's it like being married to someone from another country?
What is it like being married to someone from another country?
I think
in the beginning there was a huge learning curve, and like because he's from England, he speaks English, but like English folk have a very distinct accent.
Yep, they
and
do.
and he's from Manchester, which almost sounds like it's like a northern brogue, as he says. So when people first meet him, they're like, South African, Irish.
I could see that.
Where are you from?
Yep.
And he always jokes, he goes, I'm from Mexico. And then they go, oh, okay. And he's like, no, I'm from Manchester. So it was, it was tough. Not tough, but there was a little bit of a learning curve because I almost had to relearn words. So, for example, I'm a wee bit peckish. Do you know what that means?
No.
It means I'm a little bit hungry.
I would. Okay. I
Yeah.
guess
And
that.
so in the beginning, you're just like, I don't know what you're saying.
Okay.
What's that? Or like kecks or shoes, or I mean, now when I hear all these words, you're just like, oh yeah, because you're used to it. But in the beginning, you're like, I don't know. And I'll never forget the first time I talked to his mom. And so in England, they have tea, and tea is what you and I would call dinner. So
it's not just like
it's not like tea, like
two old ladies sitting around.
No, they have tea too, but like if she goes, oh,
is that like high tea or something?
No. Like I'm fixing. So they say like me instead of my, especially over there. So she'll say, oh, I'm fixing me tea, and I'm like, you're fixing me tea. Oh, okay. I'm like, oh, what kind of tea do you like? So I'm just like this, naive, like, oh, like Earl Grey or herbal. And then she went on to say, oh, I got me prawns from like the store, and I was sitting there and it was almost like I was hearing things and it took my brain like 10 seconds to figure out what she was saying. So there would be like this delay where she would say something and then it would be silence. I'm trying to figure out, like, what did she just say? Prawns. What are prawns?
At least it's not like a complete language barrier,
So I'd ask my husband, I'm like, what are prawns? He's like, shrimp. I'm like, oh, she's cooking shrimp for dinner? Oh my gosh, she's cooking shrimp for dinner. Okay, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so it would take like 10 minutes to figure out she's cooking shrimp for dinner. So that's what it was like in the beginning. Yeah. But fun. I mean, my husband is the sweetest mom ever. Hi, June. She lives in England, has never left, loves it, sweet as apple pie.
Well, and I know that you've been over there several times, and it's kind of funny that you had to get like a passport for your son.
Oh my goodness. Did you hear about that story?
Yeah,
that was awful. So talk about mom and dad brain when you first have a kid.
Oh, absolutely.
Like you don't know what your name is. You're like,
and
what?
Then throw in a transatlantic flight.
Yeah. So Christian, our son, our oldest now, the other one's not born yet, but he was 4 months. And so we were getting ready to go to England, and I just assumed that kids can sit on your lap and fly anywhere. Just like if you're flying domestically.
Yeah, we fly all the time.
Not a problem, right? So my husband was actually out of town at a meeting, and someone said to him, oh, how hard was it to get Christian's passport? My husband goes, what? He goes, his passport, how difficult was it to get his passport?
Yeah.
Turns ghost white. He calls me. I'm in the middle of an interview, right? And so my phone goes off. I look. I'm like, I'll call him back. Goes off again. Goes off a third time.
Probably should answer,
I'm like, something's wrong. So I answer the phone. I go, hey, honey, I'm in the middle of an interview. He goes, babe. He's like, we don't have a passport for Christian.
And when did you leave? How much time to go?
7 days.
A week?
And I was a week. And I was like, oh, he doesn't need one. It's totally fine. And he just sits on the lap. I was like, I'll call you later. He's like, no. I'm pretty sure he needs a passport.
Yep.
And so I said, okay. I wonder
if that's like a new thing.
I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe. But I work in news. I should know this, right? I should have researched it a little bit better. Whatever.
I don't know.
So anyways, I look it up. Sure enough, he needs a passport.
We didn't have our birth certificate the first time we flew with Henry.
Really?
They let us on.
That's awesome.
And then we discovered.
You might not want to put that out there publicly.
I know, right? And then they let us on, and we discovered we didn't even have his birth certificate. We lost it.
You lost his birth certificate?
Yeah, so we had to get a new one.
Oh.
But
I tell
feel
you, things are, listen, you know how it is. Parents out there, you don't know what your name is for the first 3 months after you have a baby.
I'll admit, I used to be really annoyed by just like parenting stuff before I was a parent.
Yeah.
But now I get it.
Oh,
I get
yeah.
it.
And it's fun.
Just like, but there's probably going to be some listeners now. They're like, oh gosh, there's Andrew talking about parenting again. But that's just, I don't know. It's a whole different mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? If you want to talk about parenting and it makes
Yeah,
you
it's
happy,
my podcast.
It's your podcast. You can absolutely talk about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I always like to end with like, what's next?
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think? What is next for you?
Well, there's a lot of exciting things happening. I have an app on my phone, and it randomly will tell me like a countdown until the baby's here.
Yeah.
So we're having a second boy, and he
congrats.
is due. Thank you. September 25th, which is 30 days from today.
Have you announced the name?
We don't have a name yet.
Oh,
Maybe
really?
we'll name him Andrew. We
that
literally
sounds phenomenal.
We don't have a name, and so like with Christian, we knew
That
like
kid will
4
never
months
pay
in
for
advance.
donuts ever again.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Promise?
bribe. Promise.
So,
We'll throw in a coffee for mom too.
oh, that's so nice. Yeah, so we have no name, and so it's hard because
I mean, when do you think it'll come? Like when he's born?
I'm hoping before. I'm hoping. I've put like several deadlines on it, and we keep missing the deadlines. So.
Did you announce Christian's name ahead of time?
We did. Yeah, we announced.
How do you feel about that? Because I know that's a big debate too. Like
announcing the name?
Announcing the name ahead of time, because then people will give you their feedback on it, and it's like you don't really want to hear the feedback.
Oh yeah, because I don't care what you name your kid. You can name your kid something super exotic and unique, or you can name your kid something very traditional. And someone
Well, what was the kid's
always
name
going to have
in
something to say.
the movie Big Daddy? What was
Big
that kid's
Daddy.
name?
Is that Adam Sandler's movie?
Yeah.
Gosh, I don't remember.
Okay, I remember now. It's Frankenstein.
Frankenstein.
You picked Frankenstein.
Wow. He could go by Frank or Frankie.
I mean, it could be Frank's name.
It could be.
Could be.
Could be. When we first started dating, I'm like, is your name Franklin? He's like, no, just Frank. I'm like, oh,
Really?
yeah.
Okay.
Just Frank.
Cool.
No middle name. Fun fact.
Really?
Really.
Interesting.
Yep.
Keep it simple.
Keep
I like
it simple.
I go by my middle name. I mean, it just shows you like the naming conventions don't really mean anything.
So Andrew's your middle name.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
My father and grandfather, we were all named Richard.
Oh,
Different
I
middle
love
names.
that.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Richard, you just wanted your own identity?
I guess.
Yeah?
I don't know. I mean, I think they felt obligated to name me Richard. So.
And you broke the trend with your
I did. So.
son. Oh.
Well, my grandfather's middle name was Elmo. I think he should have definitely gone.
Oh, that's
gone that
awesome.
route.
Elmo.
Yeah.
Is that how did they pick Elmo?
I have no idea, but that's just my
Interesting.
little factoid for today.
I love old names. Like I love the name Homer.
Oh,
I
yeah.
love the name Homer.
That is cool.
Yeah, but my husband said no to that.
No. I understand. Well, this has been really fun.
This has
Any
been awesome.
parting words of wisdom? We kind of covered the
I could
brunt of
talk to you,
happiness.
Andrew, for hours. It makes me happy. It does.
Oh, that's so kind.
I mean, I applaud you for what you're doing. This is awesome.
Oh, thank you.
I think we need more positivity in this world. We
So
really
true.
do. And I really, just to reiterate, I think it starts with the individual. It starts from within. It starts in your mind. And if you can control your mind and control your thoughts, I swear to you, you can do anything you want to do in this world.
Yeah, create that framework.
Yeah, just create it and know that, stop worrying about what everyone thinks or what they'll say or how you'll be perceived. I call that white noise. It doesn't matter. Figure
So
out what
true.
you want to do, put your heart and soul into it, and do it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your
Andrew,
time.
thank you. Of course. Always great to see
Yeah,
you.
we'll have to chat again. This was great.
Let's do it. Let's
All
do
right.
it. What are these right here?
Oh, we brought some donuts
For the
you.
pregnant lady.
Huh.
They look great. And they smell I can smell them through the box.
You can?
I can.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you have like a special sense of smell when you're pregnant. It's
Yeah.
weird. You can smell through boxes and cars and everything else.
Love it. It's awesome. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Andrew.
Hey everyone, if you liked what you saw, please hit the subscribe button. Also, you can find us on social media in the links below. Thank you.